Hello, everyone. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Tech Innovators Spotlight. Today, I am super excited to have the CEO and Chairman of Remark AI. But before I give the floor to him, I want to introduce my partner in crime, Sean. Sean, welcome to the show. Can you please introduce a little bit about yourself, your role with Remark AI to our audience?
Absolutely. So my name is Sean Sturman. I am the Azure Specialist for Remark AI. Been here at Microsoft for almost 6 years. Prior to that, I was at Amazon Web Services. Before that, I was at Nginx and a few other startups in the Bay Area. But I'm here to help support them adopt Microsoft technologies and grow their customer base. So it's very, very nice to meet everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. And Shing, thank you so much once again for your time. And please
Thank you.
introduce yourselves to our audience, as well as give a little bit of overview of what Remark AI is.
Yep. No, thanks for having us here. We started Remark AI about 10 years ago. So I guess we've been at it for a while. And, it took us about the first 6 to 7 years to really build the foundation of our AI platform. And then the last few years, we've been actively commercializing it globally around the world. While we do all facets of AI, I think what we've been able to distinguish ourselves is in the area of computer vision AI and kind of the ability to analyze kind of the physical space and visual data around the world. And now we provide AI solutions or really an AI platform for 8 to 10 different industries around the world.
That's fantastic. 8 to 10 industries. That's a wide plethora of industries that you're touching there. And it's a very unique sort of customer for us as well as part of this podcast, because we haven't delved into the details of what vision AI looks like, right? And what specificity that we have innovated and developed now with all of this AI sort of momentum that we are hearing in the past couple of years. So why don't you share a little bit about sort of that unique value prop that Remark AI has, and we can also talk about probably a couple of industry examples that drive home the point of what value prop Remark AI brings.
Sure. So, as we all know, our eyes kind of and vision kind of represent 80% of our senses. And, while there's been a lot of obviously a lot of press around generative AI and the ability to create new content, we feel that in terms of a broader applicability, you have, it's in the space of using computer vision and how it interacts with our physical world. Computer vision, in terms of how it deals with the physical space, we think it's the much more scalable product or platform for the world, because people can actually see what's happening and it directly affects their business from day one. And there's a very tangible ROI. So we've started out, for example, with the construction industry and manufacturing industry, in which we're working with Microsoft. And there's so many components to that, in terms of managing a construction process. It could be managing the workers, providing real-time fire and smoke detection, the ability to count the rebar, the ability to handle the big machines and eventually make them autonomous. Certainly from a manufacturing process, the ability to make sure that the quality is up to perfection. So what we provide for the customers is a very high precision in terms of accuracy, in terms of the lack of any type of false positives, or really 99.99% type of accuracy. Generally, as you can see, with just say generative AI companies, you get about 70% there. But we know when you're dealing with an industrial business, 70% is not good enough. And you have to be as close to 100% as possible. And we feel we are there in terms of what we offer to our customers.
That's amazing. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that example. You said construction companies, right? And kind of driving that precision of 99% versus the 70%. Give us an example of what, in real life, it would look like if a scenario with AI had 70% accuracy versus 99%. Like, what would that difference be and why it is so important?
Yeah. So for one thing, just say using real-time fire and smoke detection. That's
Hmm.
something that's
Hmm.
near and dear. If it was only 70% right, you have I guess a wrong allocation of resources, people reacting to situations where it's not a fire, or
Hmm.
or as we know on a construction site with smoke, there's smoke, dust, and steam. So the ability to tell the difference is incredibly important, that there aren't any false reactions to it. Now, if we're 70% there, I think you have a lot of wasted time, energy, and probably a lot of angry people reacting to it. So you have to be very accurate when you're dealing with something like that.
That is super helpful just to understand sort of the impact that it would bring, right? And why that accuracy is super important. So tell us, with the innovations that you're seeing in the past couple of years, um, what either it is more innovation for Remark AI with the innovation that you see in the AI technology and tech stack, or is it more precision? Like, how do you see Remark AI's product portfolio changing in the last couple of years with this huge splash of AI that has happened?
Yeah, I think, frankly, I think it comes to the knowledge of how to use
Hmm.
AI, which is most important. We certainly don't go to any industry and pretend that we're experts, but we have built a very strong AI platform that can adapt and be trained off of our customers' data and expertise. Say, for example, in the aviation industry, when they're doing engine turbine maintenance, and in terms of the checkups, it costs a lot of money to do that. There's a lot of downtime when they're doing the maintenance checkup. But once we had worked with our customer, which is just say one of the top 5 airlines in the world, they told us about this problem. We built a solution where they would use our computer vision to check the individual engine turbine blades. So now you're turning around an engine in under 10 minutes in terms of the inspection period. So this is not only reducing the downtime, because obviously with more downtime, the airplanes are not making any money, but it's also making sure that you don't have to deal with a lot of the human errors in terms of checking the blades, right? Because the blades are trained with a lot of data, millions of data points, and when you're just relying on the human eye to look for any type of cracks, burns, or anything like that that can cause some problems, it might not be the most efficient.
That is so timely, the example that you're giving, right? Because we see in news every other week
Right.
about something going wrong with some airline, some plane, somewhere, right? Like it's
Right.
like this constant thing. And so it's very timely to kind of showcase how AI and how Remark AI is bringing all these innovations to the airline industry so we can have less and less of those. So that's pretty remarkable. I know when we were on the prep call, you also touched on agriculture, and I think that is also a very unique sort of industry aspect that you bring. Would you like to share with our
Sure.
audience in terms
Yeah.
of how Remark AI is helping the agriculture industry?
Yeah, I mean, kind of to your point, labor is a major issue right now.
Hmm.
And I don't think, a lot of people look at AI as a potential enemy, but it's not really the case. AI is meant to support the team that's currently working, help augment and kind of expand the areas that people can cover, and just to do it more accurately and better. As it relates to agriculture, there are a couple areas that we thought were interesting. One is managing the actual, in this particular case I'm thinking of is with the swine and with the pig farms, and the ability to do pig facial recognition, because it's a much cheaper way, a much more accurate way. In the past, if a pig gets sick, then they might have to eliminate hundreds of pigs or even thousands of pigs in that particular area. Now they're able to figure out which pigs are the ones that are affected. And in the past, you also have a lot of insurance fraud, because they would take the tag off the ear and put it off of put it on another pig, and you're like, what do you do? But at least with pigs, there's very There's very unique facial characteristics. That's number one. Number two, how a pig is healthy or not. It depends on how they sleep, how they walk. The third part is in the situation of pigs in terms of to be ability to use the camera to measure the back fat, which is very important on how they cultivate the pigs. To the actual biosafety of the farm in terms of how they handle the carcass, how they handle the trucks that are coming in and out, how much time is spent on washing the trucks to drying them, and then what areas of the workers are allowed to go in. I mean, these are all, I think, fall under the kind of the SOP process that, in running any type of farm or factory is really needed. And while it's not the kind of what I guess the revenue generator, I think the safety and food security is the most important. So we've developed this for for pig farming, and we first introduced it to Asia, and we feel certainly in the rest of the world that they'll find this to be pretty attractive technology.
That's fascinating. Yeah, and you're right. Even if it is not contributing directly to the bottom line, all of these aspects that you have highlighted, time to value, saving resources, health, not shut down for a longer period of time, whether it is in agriculture like pig farms or whether it is airlines, it doesn't matter, right? All of these do accrue to the bottom line eventually. And so it is definitely something that everybody is considering. And it's very important for us to solve. And if AI and Remark AI are solving for it, then
Yeah.
it's much better for our customers, right? To leverage those
Yeah.
technologies that you have built in place. I know Sean has worked closely with you and he has a few questions. Sean, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I want to get to, just make a mention of what you spoke on earlier. You talked about AI augmenting the workforce. And one thing I do love about Remark is your ability to use pre-existing cameras that your customers have already invested in. How is AI allowing you to augment these hardware investments that your customers have made?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think as we all know, the economy is tough right now, and no one's, I think no one's exactly thinking about, okay, let's limit our kind of capital outlays and replace our camera infrastructure. So I think a lot of the cameras, have been purchased over the last few years, and so using our AI, but they're dumb cameras in that sense, right? So we would kind of create the brain behind the camera or supply the brain, and through that camera, we work with, say, for example, one of the largest QSR or these fast food chains right now in the U.S. And we've been pitching them for 4 years or 5 years, and they were always like, "Hey, we're not ready for AI yet." And then finally, we get a call and said, "Okay, we're ready now." It took us a year to really understand how AI can impact our business. We have so many cameras that cover our few thousand stores, but instead of using them to just focus on security, we now want to use it from an AI perspective. So a lot of that is inventory management, right? Just making sure that the shelf, the biggest opportunity cost is not having your inventory there. To making sure the customer service is done correctly. Obviously, theft is still a very big deal. Making sure that making sure that there are no empty seats or the proper cleaning is done. So suddenly that camera, at one point was just focused on one thing, now is able to handle 10 different functions, and suddenly you're seeing much more of a better ROI for these stores to adopt AI.
Thank you. No, I love that. I love that you guys are able to uplift it, and so many customers have made investments. It's really wonderful to be able to let them, to kind of just jump right into it. We're in the era of AI, right? And the market and time is tough. Like, how has the wide adoption and pervasiveness of AI and as a talking point shaped your offerings to your customers and their expectations of value from AI? Has it changed in the last year compared to when you guys started off? As you've been
Yeah.
in in the market
Yeah,
a lot.
I think the big thing is everyone wants to see the ROI immediately, right? And so so we can't just come in and say, here's 1 to 5 solutions where we think it will help your business. We have to come in and say, here are 1 to 5 solutions where this is the ROI that we think that we can immediately generate for you. When they're signing at the dotted line, they have people to answer to. It's like, why are we spending this money? So we need to prove that, and it doesn't matter whether you're working with private businesses or public institutions. It's all that same kind of high standard, to hit. So that's kind of what we're looking to do. Is say for example, when we're talking to it could be like a subway or a train company where when they look at the cameras, just say, okay, how can you stop fare evasion, right? And if you're able to stop the fare evasion by 25 to 50%, what will that equate to us in terms of money value? And then using that same camera, you also have the issues of workers' comp. Or tort liability, where they don't have the ability to go through all that video footage in a timely way to see kind of those issues. And the AI helps you parse through that information, and you don't have to store all that content, which of course costs money. And then the third part, of course, is the typical things that we see of fire and smoke detection. Obviously, if something happens, it delays the trains. Looking for cracks within the railways, to people that leave unattended baggage or any type of loitering, violence detection. These are all costs, or these will lead to costs that will be very high. And we are very confident that our AI will at least help prevent that, or reduce that down significantly, where you get that ROI immediately.
Thank you very much. Yeah. One thing about coding is anything is possible, and AI, it's kind of, I don't want to say it's the Wild West right now, but the door is wide open for it to take you anywhere. Where do you see AI taking Remark in the near future, and in the long term? How do you see it shaping your company and what you offer to your customers?
Yeah, I think we're only in the second inning right now. We've been just as I said before, we've been at this for 10 years now, and it allowed us to not just build the technology, build a product, which is, I think, almost even more important. And now the customers, thanks to OpenAI and really Microsoft supporting OpenAI, it's the whole world now at least believes AI exists, right? And then we needed another year or two to figure out how do we use that AI, and then maybe another year to establish the budgeting for AI. So now, as we are passing all these different hurdles, we think the timing is great, because now they understand the use cases for AI, they have the budget, and the technology is available. And the fourth part is the pricing is available as well, because maybe a few years ago the pricing was just so far out that no company would think about it, but now it's very affordable. We unfortunately have the situation with labor being an issue, so people need to do something to address these issues.
Absolutely. As it gets cheaper, right? You have the democratization of AI, so it's only going to get more and more approachable. And it seems like you guys have, you've been in this space for 10 years, right? And tremendous first movers advantage. So congrats to you. Absolutely. So there's a lot of different hypervisors out there and partners that you can work with. Can I ask you, what made you guys decide to go with Microsoft for this journey?
Yeah, it was a pretty easy decision. Just the global footprint, the know-how, and the scalability. I think those three things. We again had built a strong technology. A lot of people told us that, but we said, okay, but we need to be able to make that into a great product. We needed the know-how, and as we continue to expand into all these different industries, and to do that around the world, Microsoft was the easy choice. If it was an issue, I think within the first couple months, aviation, retail, manufacturing, security, there was an industry expert that has been involved in it for 10, 15 years that we could immediately tap into. They already knew who to talk to. They knew what they were looking for, and it's pretty hard to replicate that, and looking even future, as you were saying, the whole democratizing of the AI, what I feel is going to be the edge is the business intelligence, right? And so, Microsoft with this know-how really provides that. And obviously on the technology side, that kind of speaks for itself, just the ability, the resources, and we as fast as we want to grow, we know Microsoft will be able to, be there.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. Business intelligence is kind of the next wave. Is how do you see Remark playing into that business intelligence and being able to feed the massive data footprint that continues to grow with the advent of AI?
Yeah, I think because now companies are becoming to be more open, they're willing to give you their data, and I think that's
Mhm.
the key, right? And we built a strong model, but we're not the best. We're not even close to being the best in these different industries. But once you build that trust, when we did that, say for example with the pig farming, we knew nothing about it, and it took us several years training on their data, and now we know what to look for, we become mini experts in that world, just something that's so far from what I was used to. Same thing with dealing with retailing, whether it's selling clothes or working at a whether it's a 10,000 square foot retail center to a 2,000 square foot convenience center to a massive 500,000 hypermarket. So these are all kind of experiences that we didn't really know how to do until you're actually doing it. So all the industries that we're part of, they're real use cases. They've been tested and tried. Not everything works great in a laboratory. Everything looks great in a laboratory environment. But when you're dealing with a lot of environmental issues, just whether the actual some of the people that are overseeing the analytics know how to use it. These are all the factors that come into play. So we're pretty happy. We're fortunate now to have these years of experience under our belt to capitalize on that.
So Shing, kind of pulling that thread a little bit further of the long term for Remark AI, you probably have heard about agentic framework and how agents can go execute, right? So all the examples that you have given, they all are like, okay, here are the observations, here are the videotapes, here is where the smoke is, right? All of those things. Do you foresee with agents in the play in near future, Remark AI has sort of potential to also go and have some sort of execution of the tasks of dispatching, the firemen, for example,
Right.
or
Right.
whatever it may look like. Can you give our audience a little bit of insight into probably what's coming down the pipe from that
Yeah,
standpoint?
I think just two things just come
Mm,
right in my mind. One's in the private sector, one's in the public. First one
mm,
is in dealing with airlines, right? I mean,
mm.
the airline call center is one of the most complicated kind of environments of handling all the different requests. We've I think have built a pretty good product in getting there, and of course, it's going to get better. It has to get better. But to be able to handle all these different requests in so many different languages, in knowing what to do, yeah, I think that's already here and just going to get better. But again, to selling it to the customer, you can't just be 70% accurate. No, I don't think
Yes.
any customer who buys an airline ticket wants to be like, oh, we almost got you on the flight that you wanted, right? Or just the wrong day or wrong hour. So I think that's already here, but just getting better every day, and
Mm,
certainly the
mm,
beauty of AI, it is working 24/7. It's always training itself. The other aspect is on the public side. We have a major issue in the U.S. with 311 call volumes. And these are the non-emergency calls. Obviously, the emergency goes to the 911. So a lot of times you got two issues. The time that a person calls through 311, it becomes a non-emergency into an emergency. And so that 5 to 10 minute period where no one's picked up that phone call or no one's responding, a person's waiting online or on the phone for someone to answer, it is a problem. So having these smart agents be able to understand exactly what's happening and what's the severity of the situation. If someone says there's a lot of trash on the street, what does that mean? But using, say, for example, computer vision, you know how to allocate the resources and how dangerous it is when it's there, or to pick up things that the caller never brought on. The other aspect is on a similar note is if a person says there's a fire, right? Do you send 2 fire trucks or do you send 10? In the past, there hasn't been a way to kind of figure out the best way to allocate those resources. But so I think this is only going to get better and really help municipalities manage this.
That's very insightful. And you can see the direct impact that it will bring to humans, right? And so
Yep.
sometimes it's like, yes, it's better for resources and time to value and for companies to be successful and all of those things. Here we are directly kind of showcasing how AI is helping humans, which is which it can get better than that, right?
Yeah.
So that's fantastic. You touched on this as you were having a conversation of certain customers not ready at that point, and now they're kind of giving you a call and saying, "Hey, we are ready." There are so many out there that are still, they all are apprehensive about AI and how the data is being used, or is it there to stay, or is it just a hype and it's going to disappear, right? Like all of those things are out there. What would be your guidance for our customers, our common customers, to embark onto AI and leverage the technologies that you build, that Microsoft builds, and onboard onto it? Or there is a word of caution there. Like either way, we can go. But what's your
Yeah.
philosophy around that?
I think it's a crawl, walk, run approach. And I think personally, I think obviously, maybe I'm biased, but if you're not involved in AI in some way, I think you're going to be left behind running your business or whatever agency you might be running. And it's certainly not just the temporary wave. This is just this is what you need to do, right, to be much more efficient and to compete. And you understand everyone is under different budget or time pressure, but you never really understand the commitment until you kind of dip your toe in it. Now you're understanding, what it is exactly. You're looking at the results, and you're seeing pretty quickly how they affect your business. I know when we work with, say for example, in the construction industry or in the QSR market with the restaurants, no one's saying roll out 2,000 stores at once or 500 construction sites, right? Let's do 25, let's do 50. Okay, now let's do 150. And then now they can begin to see in a very fast manner. You're not seeing, it's not like come back to us in 6 months or even 3 months to see what the ROI is. I would say within 1 month, you can quickly see where the returns are coming from. And so I think, this is not in computer vision, but you see with a lot of the coding co-pilots that are being done, companies are finding that it's almost an immediate ROI where these models are able to help to do 50 or 75% of the coding, and they see that within the first week. And so certainly same thing with computer vision. A lot of the issues that dealt with automation or any type of SOP that you didn't that it could be due to a human's just being tired or their error or something that they might done on purpose, but that just takes that out of the equation. So I think in our experience with our customers, it's a learning curve in the beginning, but as soon as they get over hump, which is very fast, they're like, why am I not doing this through my entire kind of base, but why am I not doing more? So we try to go in, we don't try to sell 10 solutions at once, right? We're like, okay, pick 3 solutions that you guys need right now, and you can immediately see the benefits. And then we look to land and expand. And hopefully, kind of like a cable company, you're buying HBO, and in the future, you're buying all the different other channels. We're looking to do the same thing.
That's fantastic. And a great way to put it, right? It's like crawl, walk, run. It's like start with a couple solutions, test it out, get your feet wet. And then if you're comfortable, as you get comfortable, as you ramp up on the resources, as you ramp up on the technical skilling, then we start going deeper with this and
Yeah.
make either more efficient decisions, help with your bottom line, whatever it may look like. So
And
that's a great
and
way to put it.
I would add it's also the time frame. We're not looking to
Yes.
have a customer for 1 year and then see you later. We're
Yeah.
looking for the next 5 years, next 10 years. How do we keep you as the customer, but every year you're adding more solutions, and obviously everyone they win and we win, and obviously Microsoft wins.
That's fantastic. On that note, oh, Sean, did you
Oh
have
yeah,
something?
I had a question. Yeah, because you said, don't try to do 10 things, do 3 things. Like, what's your advice to customers because everyone wants to do everything all at once, right? I want AI to solve it all. What's your advice to customers in finding those 1 to 3 workloads that they really can derive value from very quickly?
I kind of go back to the fire and safety, fire and smoke detection. I think that's something that a lot of people haven't seen before. They rely on smoke detectors, but as we know, it either gets too dusty, or by the time the smoke gets up there, it's already, gets detected, it's already too late. So people look for that. Number two, people look for people with high traffic flow are looking for how do we get that real-time video analytics on understanding what's happening, the situation analysis of people counting, of understanding, the heat maps, any type of unexpected reactions, from the crowds or anything like that. The third part I would say is how do they better manage the workforce, right? And so whether that's wearing the right uniform, whether that's making sure that the obviously it's the right employees. Some of these construction projects have permanent versus temporary workers, which is causes an issue as well. I think that's what we're seeing. It's like I need to be able to manage our workforce. I need to have something that handles the safety area, and that's why that's kind of an easy thing. Or violence detection is another
Yeah.
one. And then the third part from the kind of revenue generation side is like, how do we have a better handle of who's coming into our store? So I think those are the 3 areas that we kind of create 3 buckets, and then have them kind of pick one out of each bucket, and then we can get the ball rolling. And there's very little. We don't do kind of a free POC because we want them to be committed and pay attention
Yeah.
to what's happening.
On that note, our sellers are sort of the extended army of your sales team. So if our sellers are talking, just like me and Sean, we both are sellers as well. Like if you're talking to our customers, what are the things that we should listen for, where we feel like, okay, Remark AI can solve these customer problems. Let's bring them into the conversation. What would those be?
Yeah, I think when a person's looking for increased efficiency, lower costs, all the stuff that we kind of want to look for, and there's an area where the camera comes into play. And this, I'm not just thinking about the cameras on the roof. It could be cameras. A big wave is in the future is with the humanoids and robots. Working with drones, anything that has a camera component to it that can lead to an increased output. We think we can really be helpful there. And so a lot of it, everyone is always looking for that increased efficiency. Doesn't matter which industry. So even if they haven't thought about it, it's something as an area that if they can dream it, we can generally build it as long as it comes out with the camera version. And generally, I think the strength to what we do is, if you tell us an issue, it isn't like, okay, we'll see you in 6 to 9 months and come up with a prototype. We'll have a prototype within 2 or 3 weeks, so we can quickly work on the situation, improve the model, and have something working. So we'll know very quickly while it's fresh on everyone's head, like, can we do it or not? I think that's kind of the main thing, because a lot of people don't know what they want. But so when we talk to these, different industry experts, they're like, well, this is an issue that we have here. Say, for example, I'll use in these convenience stores, they have a lot of self-checkout, machines that they've put on over the last few years. But when there's a lot of issue with theft, and when people come through, they might do some type of sleight of hand movement where it looks like they're scanning, but they're not scanning, but it ends up in their bag. But there's AI to track that now, and you're seeing that type of adoption in Europe. You're seeing that in Asia, and hopefully soon in the US with a lot of this checkout. But again, that was something that if you were we were told of this opportunity. They told us their issues, and we're like, okay, let us get back to you on this. And then we have a very good AI model to detect self-checkout theft. Or going into railway safety, looking for cracks. So far what you read about are people are using sound to try to check for cracks, but there's a way to use the visual component, to use the camera, while that's being done in Asia, and to bring that technology to the US, as we're modernizing all the railways into Europe, to look for railway safety, improve those railway safety measures through the camera.
That's fantastic. Like you hit it in the head in terms of vision, and anything that requires that, like bring Remark AI in, and Remark AI will move fast. So be prepared, and we are going to deliver, right? That's sort of is the message. That's awesome. If our customers want to learn more about Remark AI, where should they go?
Talk to the most appropriate Microsoft salesperson. That's always the best way. Otherwise,
connect.
Connect. That's the best way, because I think that provides the credibility, because it's not just from the technology side, but there is a lot of that industry trust. It's like, hey guys, we get pitched all kinds of solutions. We see what Remark does. This is what we feel can help your business. That goes a long way, much further than here, go to this website and see what's available.
Awesome. Very well said. So talk to Sean, call Sean.
That's right.
Both his phone up.
Yes, exactly. I love it. That's awesome. Okay, so we're gonna wrap it up. Any final words of wisdom from you, Shing, and then from you, Sean?
I mean, I think the only words of wisdom is like, we're obviously very committed to the field of computer vision AI. I think that's an area where you can see immediate benefits to your business, and it's only going to grow every year that passes. That kind of scalability, that exponential effect of how it can help your business just increases. So, we are certainly believers in, we hope the potential customers that, Microsoft is always in touch with daily are too.
That's awesome.
And I would say, the Remark's strength is its ability to build, bespoke solutions from computer vision. So bring your hardest problems here. Might not be able to solve all of them, like world hunger with computer vision, but you solve some pretty challenging ones with it. So come talk to me, come talk to Remark, and we'll see what we can do for your customers.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, both of you, once again, for taking the time, sharing the experiences about Remark AI with our customers. Thank you to our audience for dialing in and listening into this episode. I will see you next time with another exciting episode. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Tech Innovators Spotlight podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Want to learn more about the AI innovations discussed? Visit techinnovatorsspotlight.com for more resources and insights from Microsoft and our technology partners. Stay tuned for more episodes where we continue to uncover the stories that are shaping the future of AI.